What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, aka Franchise Play, and I'm coming to you with the first ever version of Mazique Speaks. And I didn't tell you guys the name of the whole thing because I didn't want it to be too confusing because everybody pretty much is tuning in for the return of Ask FP. And that's exactly what this is. And I'm not changing the name of Ask FP. Ask FP is still that. But what Ask FP now is just a segment in a weekly show that I'm going to be doing every Wednesday at 6 p.m. called Mazique Speaks. So you'll see. You know what? I could give a whole breakdown of the formula and all of the format, but I'm just going to jump right into it. You came here for Ask FP. I'm going to give you that and a little bit more after that. And also, after this is over, we're going to jump into the stream. I'm going to probably take a little bit of a break, but we're going to stream the NBA 2K17 Legends roster. Junior's not here. My main man is on a retreat with his school, having a ball. God bless him and all the kids there. So he's going to be doing that. So he'll be back next week for this stream. So I'll be on my own this time. We're going to have the Houston Rockets, the all-time Houston Rockets will be out there. So it's a really good team. So you might want to watch that stream a little bit later on this evening. But for right now, let's jump into Ask FP. It's been a long time since we did this Ask FP thing, but let's get to it right now, right? So the first question that I have here right now is from Alex, Neo Prankster. He says, what do you think the NFL should do to make their product more attractive to millennials? I think that's a very interesting and kind of a deep question there, Alex, because obviously that's something every company wants to know what to do. Every company wants to know, how can I make my product more attractive to a fan base or to the community or to a specific demographic? And everybody pretty much just about needs to be catering to or looking to attract millennials, because those people born in that are considered millennials are really going to be the primary consumers for the next 15, 20 years, probably, right? So the NFL right now is still extremely popular. So don't let anybody tell you that they're not. Take a look at the Super Bowl ratings, and you see just how popular, how big of a deal the Super Bowl still is, right? And the NFL on a whole. But they do have some concerns. One of the concerns is player safety. You're starting to see young guys retire from the NFL with head injuries, and they're like, they're not wanting to take the risk. And then the bad part about that is, now if that bleeds off into a situation where you have parents saying, I don't want my child to play football, which I'm gonna be honest right now, as much as I love football, my hand is up. If Junior wanted to play football, I probably would not allow him to play. I probably wouldn't. And that shocks a lot of people, because people know how much I love football. They know how much I love sports. But I can't say definitively that I would give Junior the thumbs up to play football. So to answer your question, I think the first thing that has to be tackled is safety. And I don't necessarily know that can be done with rule changes, because now what we're seeing with these rule changes is we're seeing the game itself being altered to a place where it's almost like it's not football anymore, right? This kind of feels like that, right? And that's certainly not what we want. People still want to see the collisions. They still want to see the gladiator aspect of the sport. So at that point, then, to me, and now it starts to come down to equipment. We got to get to a place, and I know it's easy for me to say because I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, but if we can get to a place where players can begin to get the types of helmets and headgear or padding or whatever have you that can drastically reduce the amount of concussions that players experience in games, then I think that would go a long way. Also, in terms of marketing the sport to more millennials, if you have kids responded to Odell Beckham Jr. as much as I've seen kids respond to any football player in a long time. And why? People will say, well, why is that? Well, if you look at Odell Beckham Jr., he has the type of makeup, physical makeup, and overall packaging that generally appeals to younger people. He has the haircut, he has the swag, the style, the whole nine, and that's what a lot of young people, the millennials, want to see. They want to see that type of an athlete who is flamboyant and charismatic like that. So I think that the NFL needs to market its stars a little bit more and market the types of stars that appeal to millennials. I think those two things, safety and more marketing of the charismatic stars, is going to be something that helps sustain and even grow the level of popularity with millennials in terms of the NFL. All right, so let's go to the next question, which comes from Pal Stirrer, my main man. He is one of the longest tenured, if you want to call it tenure. He's one of the longest longest reigning or long-standing supporters that I have on my channel, and I truly appreciate him and everybody else who has been around for a while, and even the people who have just come about. But Pal Stirrer says, with the return of Ask FP soon, he sent this to me 2 days ago. He said, did Super Bowl 51 make Tom Brady the greatest quarterback in history? My answer to that question is no. And the reason being is because he was already the greatest quarterback in history, win or lose in Super Bowl 51. And I have to preface that or put that in a different type of perspective, right? Because in football, for me, this is my opinion, the best is so relative. And that's because greatness in football is so determined by systems and having the right this and having the right coach and so on and so forth. In baseball, if you are getting the at-bats, for the most part, there's a few things here and there. If you're getting the at-bats, you go up to the plate with a certain, whatever your approach is, you go up there. If you can hit, you can hit. Okay? It's just what it is. As a pitcher, if you can pitch, if you can get guys out, you can get guys out. Now, yeah, was someone using you as a starter and you should have been a reliever or vice versa? Okay, you have that little bit of a caveat there. Also, did you have the right pitching coach? Yeah, a little bit, right? Here and there, you can say that, right? In basketball, the same thing. If a guy can get buckets, if he's getting an opportunity to play, he's gonna more than likely get buckets. If a guy's a good rebounder and if he's on the court, he's gonna get a chance to play. In football, if a player is mismatched in a system, he can look like he's terrible and then get put into the proper system and look like he is one of the best players in the NFL, in the league. So I do think it's a lot relative there, but what you can't take away is you can't take away accomplishments, right? And Tom Brady before Sunday was already a 4-time Super Bowl winner already, right? So that's amazing in itself. He already had seasons where he rewrote the record books with the New England Patriots. He's already done that. He's already proven, even before Sunday, that he can do all these things even without having the greatest supporting cast in regards to receivers. Even sometimes the offensive line has been patchwork. He'd already done that stuff before Sunday. So to me, he didn't need Sunday to become the greatest quarterback of all time or the most accomplished quarterback of all time. But if you gave me an opportunity to pick one quarterback in one game, the guy I would want is actually not Tom Brady. And that's no disrespect to Tom Brady. But the guy that I would want is Steve Young. Steve Young, for me, he's the epitome of toughness at the quarterback position. Yes, he's left-handed, and I know that's somewhat frowned upon, but he was an extremely accurate passer. We don't even have to talk about the mobility. He's one of the most mobile quarterbacks and physically tough runners at the quarterback position that there has ever been. And probably most importantly for me, and when we're talking about the quarterback position, he's an absolute leader. Absolute leader. He's like Chad Pennington with a good arm and a more physically tough body. And I don't know. For me personally, man, I'm taking Steve Young all day, every day. But yeah, but I mean, Tom Brady is still the most accomplished, and you could say the greatest quarterback of all time because of what he's accomplished. But yeah, so but he wouldn't necessarily be my quarterback if I had one guy to pick. All right, so let's go into our next question. And this one comes from Weston Flores, who is also a longtime supporter of mine. He is back for the return of Ask FP, and I definitely do appreciate you sticking with me there, sir. Weston Flores asks, is well, I'm sorry, I meant to take that one out because this is actually the same. Well, it's a little bit different because he says it's Tom Brady is the best player. I would not say he's the best player, but that wouldn't, it's a little bit too similar to Palsters. See, this is what happens when you get live. But Weston Flores says, what is your opinion on the WWE cruiserweight division? Right. I dig that question. I like that question. We're bringing a little bit of WWE back into the Ask FP segment of Mazique Speaks. And let me just pause right now because my lower third, I'm still working on getting the lower third showing up on the screen. Since Hangouts changed, it kind of threw me off a little bit, but I'll get it. But if you want to participate in Ask FP, all you have to do is on Twitter, send me a question at Unique Mazique. The Twitter handle is in the description of this video. Send me a question, more than likely sports related questions. Sometimes some pop culture stuff fits in there too. Send me a question, hashtag AskFP at Unique Mazique, and I will try to make sure that I get to it. Usually I probably won't do more than 20 in an episode. I don't have quite 20 this time, but just so you have that guideline. But let's get back to Weston Flores' question. And he says he wants my opinion on the WWE Cruiserweight division. I think that the Cruiserweight division has obviously a nice collection of athletes. They even have some guys that have some nice character, some nice personas. I do think something is missing, though. I would say this. You definitely need to watch 205 live if you really want to get the full gist and get into the Cruiserweight division. I don't believe that the segment that they show on Raw is enough, really. It's enough to maybe, kind of whet your appetite for the Cruiserweight division. But if you want to really get the gist of it, you got to watch 205 live. Now, that said, I think Rich Swann as an outstanding worker is a little bit stiff. And when I say stiff in the ring, I'm talking about in terms of potentially hurting some guys. Obviously, he's not stiff movement. He's great, right? But I worry a little bit about him injuring somebody. Some of his kicks and some of the slams that he does, throws, sometimes don't look like they're as crisp as they should be. But overall, he's great in the ring. Neville is fantastic, and he's even better as a heel. I like Brian Kendrick. He's pretty decent. Mustafa Ali is an excellent athlete. TJ Perkins, I also think, is a good athlete. But I think they started off the Cruiserweight division with some kind of bad habits. Oh, also, Cedric Alexander is phenomenal, right? I think they started off with some bad habits, though. The whole shaking hands thing at the beginning of matches, that's stupid. You know what I mean? I think it's really stupid. It's just lame. And they haven't even done enough with those sequences enough to, I have no idea what they're doing with that. It's pointless. And I don't even know where that came from. But yeah, that's not cool. I think that they're trying to inject a little bit of, what do you want to call it? Some drama and story-based stuff, in there. But I think they're struggling. I thought the Noam Dar, Cedric Alexander thing with the triangle with Alicia Fox was pretty decent. Then they went and did something weird with it where Alicia Fox left and went with Dar, and it's just kind of weird. It's not really hitting the way I think they wanted it to. But honestly, Neville and Rich Swann are so good, and that feud has such potential that it's worth it for me. And if Austin Aries ever debuts in Cruiserweight and starts to participate, it should get even better from there. So it's going to be interesting. One thing I've said, and I've written this in some of the articles, and for anybody who's watching for the first time, I am a writer for Forbes, Forbes.com, and I cover wrestling, WWE, boxing, MMA, some basketball, even some baseball and football at times. I've written this in articles. I really think that Enzo Amore's future should be in the cruiserweight division. I just feel that, first of all, they could really use a character as strong as his. They really could use that. It's clear Big Cass is going to be a single star. He's probably going to be a WWE champion at some point. And once he really hits his single stride, there's really no place for him and Enzo together as this duo. I'm surprised they never let them win the tag team championship or haven't allowed it to happen as of yet. I think maybe they were on path to do that before Enzo got injured in a match with the Vaudevillains. Looks like, man, that was like a year ago. So, but I think Enzo would be great in the cruiserweight division. That's what I really think he should be. He's not great in the ring at all. He's just okay. He's not a good worker at all, but that mic presence is so strong, and that's something that I think that is missing a little bit. I don't know how many strong mic workers would you say there is in the cruiserweight division. For me, of who I've seen, Jack Gallagher, Neville's been really, really good. Brian Kendrick's been good, and if Austin Aries comes, he's good. But Swan's not strong yet. He can't stop smiling. Like, he'll be like giving a promo about like his dog dying. He's like, "Yeah, my dog died Tuesday." I'm so sad about it. Bro, that ain't how that don't. Yeah, it's not working, bro. It's not working. You gotta get rid of that. All right. So I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's go to our next question, which we almost lost ourselves there. All right. Let's go. It is from Weston Flores as well. Let me show it to you so you know I'm not lying. Weston Flores says, tell me where these MLB free agents will land and for how much. Wow, that's a heck of a question, Weston. I would have to say, man, Chris Carter is a really, that's a tough one, because we're talking about a guy who is pretty much like, he's straight all or nothing. He's straight all or nothing. He is the type of guy, and I'm going to pull up a few of his statistics and stuff like that. I mean, I was going to actually have some of this stuff ready for you guys, but, he's an all or nothing guy. When you asked me this question, I don't think he had signed yet, but I believe yesterday, if I'm looking at this correctly, yesterday he signed with the Yankees. And that actually somewhat makes sense, especially being, with the dimensions there in the new Yankee Stadium. I think that makes sense for him as a first baseman, defensive. A designated hitter, not a left fielder. I wouldn't put him in left field. Only way I'd put him in left field is if he hits 260. With 45 home runs and 110 RBIs next season, then maybe I put him in left field. And you notice I said 260 because that's probably the best. That's like his career year. Last year he led the National League in home runs with 41 and drove in 94. He also led the league in strikeouts, which was the second time he'd done that in his career, with 206. But he hit only 222. He's not going to give you much more than that. So. That one there, man, I mean, we'll see what happens with that with the Yankees. I don't know what they'll all be depending on him to do. But yeah, that one, I don't know. Let's take a look at Doug Fister. Finding a consistently dependable middle reliever is tough. And Doug Fister, for the most portion of his career, he when he has been asked to come out of the bullpen, which has been sparingly here and there. In 2015, he did it a lot. Not a lot. He had 10 relief appearances. But last year he started 32 games, and he had a 4.64 ERA. His WHIP was 1.425. I don't know, man. I mean, I think I know I don't want to see him as a Cub. I know I don't want to see him as a Cub, and I know that Chris Bosio has worked some magic with late rotation guys, but Doug Fister's the best year in Doug Fister's career was 2011. He only pitched in 11 games. He had a 1.79 ERA. I mean, in 2014, he was 16-6, which is definitely solid, 2.41 ERA. But things have gone what I would say progressively worse since that season, which is the reason why he's still sitting out there without having a team. And he is, how old is he now? He's 33. So I don't know, man. It's hard. I'm gonna be honest with you, Weston. It's difficult for me to guess about baseball salaries because it's there's a lot that goes into that, and I can't tell you that 100% that I'm the one to necessarily recommend or to be able to predict that. Now we're talking about an NBA salary. I think I have a better handle on that. But let's see, Kobe Lewis is 37 years old. He still hasn't. I don't believe he signed within. He's still a free agent. Now he had a great 2015, 17-9, over 200 innings. Well, I shouldn't say great, but because his ERA was 4.66. But now last year he only pitched 19 games, which was 14 less games he pitched the season before. But his ERA was better. I would not be surprised to see him go back to Texas, even though it's a late hour type of a thing. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go back to Texas. Now, he's also a guy who I would think the Cubs might actually take a look at as well. Now, he is one that I think they might. He is a veteran, and he knows how to pitch. He's also a guy who is, outside of last year and 2012, since 2010, he has been consistently a guy who will give you innings. He does give up home runs. He does give up a few home runs, but you see, a lot of people have this thought that Wrigley Field gives up tons of home runs, and that's not altogether true. It really depends on how the wind patterns during the season. When the wind is not blowing out, Wrigley is not a place that where guys give up a ton of home runs. So that's one thing. I think that's a little bit of a misconception. But the other guy you asked about was Pedro Alvarez. Pedro Alvarez is another kind of like all or nothing guy, very somewhat similar to Chris Carter, although he hasn't quite hit as many home runs. He did lead the league in home runs in 2013, which was his only All-Star season, but he's never hit over 256 in his career. Hit 249 last year in one season with Baltimore. He's still out there, still a free agent. They say third base, first base, but I think his best, he'd be best as a DH. So I would look at him potentially. I wouldn't be shocked if he went to Houston. Houston is a place where I think that, just having another bat off the bench, I think that would be, I would say, a benefit for them. Having another bat off the bench, somebody who can play at third base, can play at first, and he can DH, and he has some pop off the bench if you need a pinch hitter. So, and also obviously is left-handed bat. So I think Houston is a good spot for Pedro Alvarez. Can't say for sure, obviously, but if I had to guess for him, that's all this would be, is a guess, that's what I would say. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Let's go into our next question. Yeah, Weston made me work on that one. All right, this next one comes from, I think this is a new Ask F peer, and like I always tell you guys, I always appreciate when we get new guys in or new people in, period. This one comes from Bob Jones, and Bob Jones says, who do you believe can beat Golden State in a 7-game series this year? Hey, that's a good question, Bob, because, I'm not. Honestly, I think the only team that I think can beat them in a 7-game series is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't think any other team can beat them 7 times. I think Houston can push them to 6. I think San Antonio could probably push them to 5. maybe 6. Um, there's nobody in the East aside from Cleveland who I think has a chance to beat them. Nobody in the East. People talk about Toronto, but Toronto is not mentally tough enough, to beat them in a 7-game series. Washington is interesting, but I don't think them either, and I don't think Boston. The only way I would say Boston has a chance to beat Golden State in the 7-game series is if they swing a deal for Jimmy Butler. And I'll talk a little bit more about that after we go through Ask FP. Cleveland is the only team that I can see that I would say has a chance to beat them in a 7-game series. All right, our next question comes from Victor Daniel Torres. We're getting our regulars back, and I appreciate it. He says, what should the Patriots do with their quarterback situation, even though they just won? Honestly, man, and it's funny how a lot of this stuff has like Chicago ties, right? I think that they should go ahead and trade Jimmy Garoppolo to the highest bidder. That's what I would do. Now, people might say, well, what are you doing? Tom Brady's great right now, but he's old. He's 37, 38 years old. You can't give away your future quarterback. Well, they could always commit to Jacoby Brissett. Depends on how they feel about him. And then the other thing of it is if they trade Garoppolo, they're going to get a collection of draft picks. There's no reason why they can't turn around and draft another quarterback that's a developmental quarterback now, just simply to take Garoppolo's place as the next guy. And then now you have Brissett and Garoppolo that you can make the decision on which way you want to go. So because Tom Brady looks like he is really fit to play 4 or 5 more years, if 4 at least, I would trade Garoppolo and I would get as many draft assets as I could do to continue to try to put good players around Brady and try to milk the Brady-Belichick connection for as many titles as I can milk it for. And that's going to be done by adding protection in front of Brady, giving him more weapons in the passing game, hopefully weapons that can stay healthy, and then obviously retooling on that defense. So that would be my plan. All right, we got another one, and this one is also from Victor Daniel Torres, and this is a really good question, man. I have a quick answer to it, though. Will Mike Vick be in the Hall of Fame? Wow. Okay, so we all know what's going on right now, and I got to touch on this a little bit, even though I don't even remember if I have an Ask FP question about this. I don't, now that I'm just double checking. First and foremost, it's a complete travesty of justice that Terrell Owens is not in the Hall of Fame. Just nutso, right? There's no way in the world you can tell me that Terrell Owens is not a Hall of Famer. I don't want to hear about his off the field stuff. I don't want to hear about somebody said he's not a good teammate. I don't want to hear any of that. Lawrence Taylor, I love Lawrence Taylor. He's one of the greatest linebackers ever lived. But if Lawrence Taylor's in the Hall of Fame, so too should Terrell Owens be. Brett Favre is obviously far from a saint. He's sending naked pictures of himself to people, the painkiller thing. All these different things is going on. He's in the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame who've had some questionable past. You can't tell me Terrell Owens is so horrible that he's worse than all of those guys. On top of all of that, I don't think any of that stuff should matter anyway, okay? It's about football, man. It's about football. I mean, we could probably look at the commissioner of the game and say there's some questionable things about him. So I just think that's ridiculous, which kind of somewhat leads me into the Mike Vick thing, right? Because if we were just talking about Mike Vick's statistics, I think you have a conversation there anyway, because he's only had, I think, one 3,000-yard season in his career. Obviously, his the biggest thing about him is his ability to run. He has a year he ran for over 1,200 yards. I believe he ran for over 700 4 times. I might be off on that 1 or 2 years, a year or so. But so you have to judge him differently. You have to judge him in a different kind of way than you would judge like most quarterbacks, because most quarterbacks, and I'm looking up a specific guy right now as a reference. Most quarterbacks are just based off of how well they threw the ball, but you can't necessarily judge Mike Vick on that. So that complicates his case as well. So one, are his statistics good enough? I'm sorry, 2 years over 3,000 yards. Are his statistics good enough? Second, where is the committee going to put the whole dogfighting thing? Okay, because we know it's been very difficult for Mike Vick to shake that whole situation. It was, definitely a horrible thing for him to have done. I mean, that goes without saying, right? Not supposed to do that. It's essentially, it's against the law, and that should be at the end of the day. It's against the law. Can't do it, right? But say, for instance, because it's hard to predict if they will look beyond that, right? Or if they will say, okay, well, he did his time. He, afterwards he came out as a much different guy and was pretty much a model citizen after that. So maybe they give him a pass for that because, I mean, he played 7 years after the 2-year suspension. Okay. So if they look past that, I would say, in my opinion, that he is a Hall of Famer. I mean, he threw for 22,000 yards, which is cool. It's good. 133 touchdowns, 88 interceptions, which is a shaky interception and touchdown to interception ratio, especially for a player in this era. I mean, you'll look back in the day at guys like Joe Namath and guys like that who had horrible turnover, touchdown to interception ratios, but the game was different. But if you look at the rushing yardage, I mean, he rushed for 6,000 yards in his career, 36 touchdowns. He led the league in yards per carry 5 times. He rushed for 1,000 yards in 2006, 900 yards in 2004, 777 yards in 2002. I mean, the statistics are insane. There's no other quarterback in the history of the game with stats like Mike Vick. Nobody. But it all depends on how you take that. And I have a feeling that he won't get in. Now, if it was me, he's in. But I have a feeling he won't get in. I have a feeling the combination of odd statistics for a quote-unquote Hall of Fame quarterback and the dogfighting thing will keep him out. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about this because I'm a big Mike Vick fan. But I if you asked me what you did, I would say he's not going to get in. All right, the next question comes from Victor Daniel Torres, and he says, we got another Super Bowl question. He says, in your opinion, was this a Pats comeback win or a Falcons choke loss? My answer to that is I think it was a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Obviously, you can't have the comeback without the choke. Okay, so, and the choke wouldn't be a choke if the Patriots don't execute. So the Patriots still had to execute. Brady still had to make the passes. The receivers still had to make the catches. The running back still had to cross the goal line. But I'll say this about the Super Bowl. A lot of people are on Kyle Shanahan and Dan Quinn for not running the ball more in the second half, and I agree. But they had an opportunity to, because I understand what they were doing. We don't want to get into a situation where we're playing not to lose, right? Because they have gotten teams into situations before, and we've seen and heard people tear teams apart. You start playing that too conservative type of football, and you just kept giving the ball back up, or you just run the ball, and you just kept giving them the ball back. Keep running your offense. They were not able to stop you, blah, blah, blah. I can hear people saying that if the Falcons had just went into a shell and started running the ball in the second half when they were up by 25 points or 20, whatever, and people would have criticized them for that had it not worked. But all of that considered, here's where there is no excuse for the Atlanta Falcons. When Julio Jones makes that catch into the Patriots territory in the fourth quarter. I believe there was like 3:15, 3:20 or something like that left on the clock. The Falcons are in field goal range and the score is 28-20. You have one of the best kickers in the NFL in Matt Bryant on your team. Why in the world are you not running the ball 3 times in a row at the very least? I'm already in field goal range. I am not calling another pass play. I'm running the ball. I'm running the ball right there. And I'm going to start to force the Patriots to start to bleed timeouts. Worst case scenario, I run the ball. I give the ball to Devontae Freeman 3 times in a row. They stop him. He gets 1 yard, 2 yards, whatever. I run Matt Bryant out there. Worst case scenario, with more time having drained off this clock and more timeouts having drained off for the Patriots, I kick a field goal and he misses. Okay, he misses. But if he misses, how much time is then now left on the clock? One of the biggest problems for the Falcons in this game is that their defense was dog tired. If you take a look at that time of possession, you'll see what I'm saying. The Falcons' defense was dog tired. Why not run the ball, right? To keep the clock running, to keep your defense on the sidelines even longer, okay? So that if the Patriots do get the ball back, that you have at least given your pass rushers who were getting home in the first 2.5 quarters, but suddenly in the last quarter and a half could not get anywhere close to Brady because they were dog tired. You give them that much time to recuperate. And Brady still has to take the team down the field, probably 55, 60 yards, maybe 70. Still got to take the ball down the field to score a touchdown, and you still got to get the 2-point conversion. And now there's even less time left. And the Patriots are probably working with no timeouts at that point. Because if you start to run the ball, then they only get to use the 2-minute warning one time. So the Patriots are probably out of timeouts at that point, and they still got to score a touchdown. They still got to kick. They still got to get the 2-point conversion. Best case scenario, you keep running the ball and they don't stop you, and you run the clock out. Middle scenario is Matt Bryant actually makes the field goal, and now you're up 11 points with like 2 minutes left. I don't care how great Tom Brady is; he's not going to come back from 11 points with 2 minutes left and no timeouts. So to me, I do think it's a little bit of both a Falcons choke and a Patriots great comeback, but I would have to say it's more of a choke than a comeback, because if you don't choke off that last offensive drive, there's no comeback. There's no comeback win. There's a valiant effort, but there's no comeback win. So that's my take on the Super Bowl. Let's go to the next question, and this one comes from another big time Ask F peer, and his name is Jared Young. And Jared Young says, Ask FP is back. Hope all is well, FP. It is. Do you think it would be a good move for my Clippers to trade for Carmelo Anthony? All right. I actually am going to say a few things about Melo today, but let me go ahead and answer your question, Jared. I think it would be a good move. I don't think it's going to put them over the top. They're not going to beat Golden State either way, and Melo doesn't change that. So I think it's a good move as long as you don't have to give away anything that you're planning to have for your future. I don't know how many players outside of Paul, Griffin, and Jordan that the Clippers have that are going to be a part of their future. So if you can somehow procure Melo without giving up those three, by all means, I'd say it's worth doing it. It's worth doing it. But if not, no. I mean, if you got to give up either of those three, I wouldn't do it. But I mean, does it help them? Yeah, it does help them. But how much is the question? All right, our next question also comes from Jared Young, and this one is back to wrestling. And he says, when it's all said and done for John Cena, do you think that he will be the greatest professional wrestler of all time. All right, man. I want y'all to get ready. Get ready right now. Get ready for the hate, because I know the hate is coming. He already is the greatest professional wrestler of all time. He already is. And I know I'm going to hear the people, oh my God, because there's so much Cena hate out there. I know I'm going to hear it. What about the Macho Man? What about Undertaker? What about Hulk Hogan? What about Shawn Michaels? What about Jake the Milkman Milligan? No, not him, but just what about everybody, right? And obviously, all of those guys I just named are awesome. And The Rock and Stone Cold and all of those guys have just been phenomenal, right? My opinion, though, with John Cena is, while John Cena has one aspect of his overall wrestling package that I would not grade as 5-star. Okay. But the thing of it is I'd probably rated 3.75 or 4. And that's his in-ring work, right? But it's his imperfections are very exaggerated by his haters. Haters act like John Cena is like the worst worker ever, right? That's how they act. They act like he can't even execute a body slam. That's how they act. They act like he can't sell a punch. He can't do anything. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. He's actually above average in the ring. He's not Cesaro. He's not Kevin Owens. He's not, AJ Styles, but he is not horrible. He's not a detriment to anybody in the ring. And the funny thing about it is this. People keep talking about how Cena's not good in the ring, but somehow he keeps participating in some of the best matches that we've seen over the past 25 years. How is that? And he's the common denominator in all of these matches. The Royal Rumble match with AJ Styles was off the meter. Okay, and all of that wasn't AJ Styles. I mean, the attitude adjustment to the fireman's carry come on, guys. I mean, he's come up with some, and he consistently seems to add moves. At this stage of his career, where he's really about ready to just be a movie star, he's still adding moves. Not to mention the fact that he's won 16 world championships, which obviously we know that's scripted. Someone decides who wins. But you have to be of a certain stature based off of your overall packaging, your mic ability, your everything, your look, everything. You got to be in that number to even be considered. He has remained in that number to be considered. He is the guy who, when he walks out, whether it's a loud boo or loud cheers, he still brings about a reaction from the crowd that is amazing, man. And because of his longevity, because of his stardom, because of his, as far as mic work, as great as the Macho Man was, as great as Dusty Rhodes was, as great as Jake the Snake Roberts was, as good as Bray Wyatt is, I think John is right there, if not better than all of them. Now, you can hate, you can say whatever you want to say. You can say whatever you want to say, man. But I'm going to tell you, when you stop hating and start appreciating, you will hear how good this guy is on the mic. I mean, have you ever sat and looked at and listened to the length of the diatribes and the soliloquies that John Cena gives off when he has the full floor for a mic session? You can probably count on one hand the times you've heard him stumble, said the wrong thing, mixed something up. He's phenomenal. I mean, it's bananas. And people are too busy hating the persona to appreciate the talent. And that's crazy. So I think I answered the question. I think he already is, guy. I think he already is. All right, here is my last question for Ask FP. And this one comes from another long-time Ask FPer. And this is one of my guys for sure. Simon Torvay Sunland got a whole new setup and everything on his Twitter. I think that's Jimi Hendrix he's got there. And he says, great to have Ask FP back, my man. But what do you think the future holds for DeMarcus Cousins? Whoa, boy. Now here's where the Sacramento Kings fans are probably going to not like me. But I'm gonna make a prediction right now. I don't think DeMarcus Cousins will ever win a championship as the best player on any team. If he joins forces with a player that's better than him, which is really difficult, going to be really difficult for him to do because he is so great, because he is so good, then possibly. But aside from that, I think just think about it. As great as DeMarcus Cousins is right now, right? I mean, if you look at his numbers, they are mind-blowing. They're like NBA 2K My Player type numbers, right? He can't even sniff the playoffs. He hasn't even sniffed them. In basketball, when a guy is that good and can't even get his team to sniff the playoffs, I don't care what your supporting cast is. Because I saw LeBron James take a dreadful Cleveland Cavaliers team in 2006 to the finals, not just the playoffs, to the finals. The supporting cast he had in 2006 was not as good as the team DeMarcus Cousins had last year. It was not. I saw Allen Iverson go to the finals with a Sixers team that was not any better than the guys that DeMarcus Cousins has right now. So I don't want to hear anything about the team. In regards, now, if we're talking about why doesn't he win a championship, okay. Well, why can't he make the playoffs? And I don't want to hear nothing about the East, the West. Why can't you make the playoffs and you are far and away the best big man in the NBA? Okay, Anthony Davis. But come on. I mean, come on. Really? This is what we're saying? Is this really what we're doing? So I don't think the future holds much for him in regards to team success unless he gets traded to some team where he's not the best player, and then he's not looked at as a leader, and he doesn't even need to act as one. And hopefully, the influence from dealing with whoever is the man on the team will help to suppress some of the immaturity that I believe has held him back and his team. So I know that sounds harsh, but that's the real deal. All right, so that's the end of Ask FP, but it is not the end of Mazique Speaks. I've been wanting to do like a straight podcast where I get an opportunity to just talk, and not, I love answering you guys' questions, but sometimes there's things that I want to talk about that maybe I didn't get a question for. So that's what this whole thing, the rest of this thing is about me talking about some topics that have come up in all of those different areas, right? So the first place I want to go is my Chicago Bulls. And I'm going to tell you guys out, just straight out, no hesitation. The Chicago Bulls need to blow it up from the top to the bottom. And when I say top, I'm not talking about Fred Hoiberg. I'm talking about Gar Forman and John Paxson. Now, it's depressing to me because there have been reports that came out via Casey Johnson, the Chicago Tribune, as recent as yesterday, that have said that sources are saying that Gar Forman is not going to be removed as a general manager, no matter, even if the Bulls don't make the playoffs this year, right? And that Gar Forman and Fred Hoiberg are a package deal. So I believe that Gar Forman has decided he's going to ride or die with Fred Hoiberg, okay? First, Bulls need to blow it up. Here's the reason why. If you take a look, and I'm gonna spot check this just so I'm where I need to be here. Gar Forman and John Paxson, however you want to group them together or whatever you want to say, right? Gar Forman became the Bulls general manager in 2000. Well, I think it was 2010. He actually won Executive of the Year with Pat Riley in 2009 is when he became the Chicago Bulls general manager, right? So if you take a look at how many head coaches Gar Forman and John Paxson have been allowed to hire, it is staggering. Because just think about this for a second. How often do you ever remember seeing, like, Vinny Del Negro was hired in 2008. Okay, Tom Thibodeau was hired in 2010. Now you got Tom Thibodeau here. I mean, now you have Fred Hoiberg here. So we're on coach 3, right? And you could say it's coach 4, because John Paxson is still in power here, right? Because he was the general manager at first, then he went upstairs, and he ended up now Gar Forman works for him. But even before all of that took place, John Paxson hired Scott Skiles. Okay, so you got Skiles, you got Del Negro, you got Thibodeau, and now you got Hoiberg, all coming from the same regime or the same front office in some way, shape, or form. That's 4 head coaches with no finals appearances. Okay, then you have a history of the front office not getting along with the head coaches that they're hiring. So the only guy they get along with is Passive Fred, who now can't lead men. So we're looking at a front office that has proven that they can successfully hire and maintain a good head coach. We're looking at a head coach now that they've hired that they seemingly can control and do whatever it is they want to do with, and he just doesn't give any pushback at all. But he has the most perplexing substitution patterns and the most perplexing rotation that you can find. And, his plight, or the case to be made for keeping Fred Hoiberg, is, well, he hasn't had an opportunity to coach his guys. He wants to play pace and space, and he hasn't been given a roster yet that's capable of doing that. Okay, so that really is insane. So why in the world did you go and sign Rajon Rondo and Dwayne Wade in the offseason if you wanted to play pace and space? You just got 2 guys that are totally not capable of playing that style. But okay, whatever. This is what you did. Even with all of that standing, and I actually mentioned this on a radio program, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, right? A good coach is going to take what he is given, and he's going to use what he has. He's not going to stay so married to his philosophy where he's trying to make square pegs fit into circle holes. Okay, I understand that Fred Hoiberg wants to play pace and space, but he does not have a pace and space roster, right? I'll give you a perfect example, and this is not even a basketball example. Brian Billick, a very successful head coach. He was the head coach for the Baltimore Ravens when they won the Super Bowl in 2000, I believe it is. Well, Brian Billick got that job based off of how well he did as an offensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings. With the Vikings, he had one of the more high-flying offenses. You had the Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, Randy Moss. They should have gone to the Super Bowl. Gary Anderson misses a field goal in Atlanta. That was the last time the Falcons went to the Super Bowl. The Falcons beat them. Gary Anderson had missed a field goal the entire regular season. He misses the field goal in the NFC Championship game, right? But Brian Billick, that's how he got to the Ravens, because of how, Brian Billick could have come into Baltimore and said, hey, you know what? We're going to create the same type of offense. We're going to be flying up and down the field. We're going to score a ton of points. No, Brian Billick looked at his roster and said, man, I got a dominant defense. I got a big, nasty offensive line, and I got a big, rugged running back in Jamal Lewis. I want to pound this ball. This is what I'm going to do because this fits my roster, okay? Why are we still talking about pace and space with the Chicago Bulls and they don't have anybody on their team that can play that style? What are we doing? So, and then this goes back to management. You hire a pace and space head coach who wants to play that philosophy, and you get him no shooters except for Isaiah Cannon. It's got to get blown up. It's got to get blown up from the top. And unfortunately for some people, that means that Jimmy Butler needs to get dealt. Because, and it's not, Jimmy Butler at this point is contaminated. And what I mean by that is Jimmy Butler has had too many negative experiences with the Chicago Bulls. Jimmy Butler is also a pretty negative dude once things start going down. I think he's proven that, right? I think he's had too many negative experiences to bring him and deliver him to a new head coach. Because Jimmy is when it goes bad, I go on autopilot kind of dude. I'm going to get my numbers and I'm going to bust my butt on the court and the fans are going to love him. Look how hard Jimmy plays. But I'm tuning the head coach out. And at the same token, at the same time, I'm dividing my team down the middle. So I got the Jimmy followers and I got the guys who follow the coach. A superstar that doesn't buy into the head coach, it kills everything. The head coach needs the superstar to buy in. That's what creates the success. And Jimmy's not going to do that unless it's Tibbs. He's not going to do it. So I think that Jimmy is 27 years old. He's a remarkable two-way player. Out of the over 30 years that I've been watching basketball, I don't think I've ever seen a guy improve more than Jimmy. Okay, so I want to give Jimmy all of the credit in the world. But at the same token, he is the most tradable and most attractive trade asset that Bulls have. And the Bulls need to blow it up. It doesn't make any sense to build around Jimmy. That would take too long. Because you know why it's going to take too long? Because the Bulls have proven that they cannot build teams through free agency. Players don't want to play there. And it has not changed. It's definitely not going to change now that we have all of this negative stuff going back and forth about the front office and front office mischief and so on and so forth. We got too much of that going on, and it's not endearing the Bulls front office and the Bulls franchise to potential free agents. It's not. So if you look back at the most successful teams that the Bulls have had, they've always been built out of the draft. Derrick Rose came from the draft. Michael Jordan came from the draft. Scottie Pippen came from the draft, even though it was a trade on draft day. Horace Grant came from the draft. The only really, truly big-time valuable player that the Bulls have had in the last, 30, 40 years that didn't come through the draft is Dennis Rodman, and that was for 3 years. That was only for 3 years. The Bulls have always built their best teams from the draft, and that's the way they're going to have to go this year. Here's the thing. There's no way in the world I trade Jimmy Butler, get 2 first-round draft picks, and the pick that they would have this year, which is probably going to be the lottery if they trade Jimmy, because if they trade Jimmy, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. They could trade Jimmy and literally have 3 lottery picks. But there's no way in the world I'm giving those 3 lottery picks to Gar Forman and Paxson. Your draft history is not good enough, especially when picking in the lottery, to have me hand you those types of assets. It's got to get blown up from the top. It's got to. So I'm going to move on. As you see, I'm passionate about that. But let's talk about Melo. Carmelo Anthony. And this whole thing with Phil is absolutely ridiculous. I really believe that Phil Jackson, I heard Jalen Rose say this last night, and I think it was a really good point. He said, is Phil Jackson trying to get fired? And I hadn't thought about that before. And I don't know, maybe it's the Michigan jump off. I don't know with Jalen Rose, but he's doing things that are so reckless. It's almost like that guy that you work with on the job and you know he's got this plan. He wants to go ahead and get his unemployment. And he's like, you know, hey, man, I don't care what happened. You know, he throwing customers product in the garbage. You know, you work at McDonald's, and you know he rubbing people's hamburgers on the ground before he hand it to him. He's like, man, I don't even care. I don't care if I get fired because I'm going to get on and play. I mean, that's how Phil is acting. Like he's like, fire me because I'm going to get paid anyway, because he's going to get his money no matter what, right? And I'm thinking it feels something like that because he has to know that bad mouthing Carmelo Anthony the way he's done consistently over the past 2 months is counterproductive. They want to trade Melo, but they're bad mouthing him. So how is that going to work? Like I don't understand how that works out. I don't understand how that helps the bottom line. I don't understand how that helps the Knicks. I don't understand how that helps Phil Jackson. I don't understand how that helps Melo. It's insane. And in my opinion, Melo is the one that's left looking to have the most class in this situation. He's not talking. He's not going back and forth. He's literally watching a near 70-year-old man make a complete fool of himself. And that's fine. And I'll let him do that. Because at the end of the day, Melo knows I'm going to get paid. Melo, I believe, wants to stay in New York. I think he wants to stay in New York. I think he wants to win in New York. But I do think he wants to win. I believe Melo would totally change his game at this point of his career. I didn't always think that. But I think at this point in his career, he would totally change his game if he thought he had a chance to win. But I think with the Knicks, he doesn't really feel that he has enough of a chance to win, which is probably not the smartest approach. But I think he doesn't really feel like this team is good enough. So he's just going to chunk it up. He's going to chuck it. He's going to chuck it. But he's going to shoot the ball. He's going to shoot the ball. He's going to shoot the ball. And he knows that somewhat gives his team a chance. But if he totally bought in, I think that you'd see him play. I think you see him play somewhat similar to the way Paul Pierce played when Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett there. Paul Pierce was not a great defender. He was decent, but he was not a great defender before Garnett and Allen got there. He became an above average defender because this is what that team really needed to win the championship. That's what they needed, and he elevated his game as an overall player when that happened. And I think you would probably see something like that from Melo if he got traded. But that said, I still don't think even an elevated, changed Melo is enough for the Clippers to be over the top. I don't know about like a team like Boston. I don't know, but I don't think it's enough for the Clippers. I don't. All right, let's talk. And this is my last topic. Let's talk about the UFC 208. This is a pay-per-view that I'm going to be totally honest with you, doesn't really feel like a pay-per-view. I don't know what it is. I'm going to tell you, this would totally feel like a pay-per-view if Holly Holm was taking on Cyborg. If Holly Holm was fighting Cyborg, then this would feel like a pay-per-view. But as it is, it feels like a nice UFC fight night. That's what it feels like. And, I'm going to show, here's the card that we're going to be looking at, and I'll be covering this on Forbes. Actually, tomorrow I'll be writing up my previews and predictions, so you guys make sure you check me out on Twitter for that. But I'm not going to talk a lot about the prelims, which there are a couple good fights on the prelim. This fight here, Randy Brown against Bilal Muhammad, is a really good fight on paper. Wilson Reese against Ulka Sasaki could be a good fight. I'm a little bit interested in that. But let's look at the main card. Dustin Poirier against Jim Miller. Honestly, Jim Miller has never shown me that he can beat the truly upper echelon guys. Now, is Dustin Poirier still one of those guys after having been conquered by Conor McGregor, having been, taken down by, in his last few fights being, made to look like less than a championship contender? He's coming off a really nasty loss to Michael Johnson. Those guys had a ton of bitter back and forth going, in the build up to that fight. And really, Poirier got smoked. He got smoked by Michael Johnson. Then we saw Michael Johnson turn around and fight Khabib Nurmagomedov and get destroyed. So it's, obviously styles make fights, but Poirier seems to be on the way down. This, to me, is a crossroads fight with Miller and Poirier. Is Miller really truly cooked? And if he beats Poirier, does that speak to how bad Poirier has become, how bad he's dropped? or is Miller better than I think he is? Honestly, I think if Miller wins this fight, it shows you that Poirier is truly on the way down. So and we got another fight, and this one's interesting. Jared Cannonier is impressive, very strong, good wrestler, really tough in the clinch. But he's fighting Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira is a massive striker, and he's also very good as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I believe, as well. But he generally likes to stand. Cannonier is a tough, big, strong guy. He's got good movement too, good boxing instincts. But Glover Teixeira is coming off nasty knockout loss to Anthony Rumble Johnson. I'm talking about scary, like, oh my God, is his lips going to still be on his face after this? And you never know how losing like that affects a guy. You just never know. As far as the UFC, Glover Teixeira has never been beaten like that. As you can see, just his WEC and UFC career, Glover Teixeira was knocked out back in 2002 by Eric Schwartz, but he went 5 rounds with John Jones, even though it was pretty one-sided. He got beat in a unanimous decision by Phil Davis, and then the knockout loss to Anthony Johnson. So it's you don't know. And then you also got to look at, he's 37 years old. At some point, things go south for everyone. Is Cannonier ready? I mean, this is a big spot for Cannonier. He's ranked 15th coming into this. Teixeira is still ranked 3rd as in the light heavyweight division. If Cannonier beats him, you got to think Cannonier immediately falls into the top 10. And then now we start to wonder about how long away from a title shot is he. So this is a good fight. It's an interesting fight. It really is. So I want to see what's going to happen there. And then we got a middleweight bout that I think is really ridiculous. Now, I'm just be honest with you. Tim Boetsch is a tough guy. He's a tough, battling guy. He really is. But there is no way I can see him beating Jacare. I mean, Jacare's striking has gotten a lot better. Now, Jacare's no spring chicken either. He really isn't. But his striking has gotten a lot better. But as far as on the ground, there are very few guys, if any, that are in this guy's league on the ground. I mean, and Tim Boetsch is not the kind of guy that I think can keep this fight off the ground. And I'm not even sure Tim Boetsch can dominate Jacare on the feet. I don't see any way Tim Boetsch is going to win this fight. I'll give my official prediction tomorrow, but I think you guys can kind of see where I'm going with that one. Next up, we got this one's interesting, definitely interesting. Who a lot of people consider to be the greatest of all time, Anderson Silva, taking on Derek Brunson. I'm going to be honest with you. Derek Brunson is somewhat tailor-made for Anderson Silva. Somewhat tailor-made. And here's why. Brunson is not big on defense. He comes forward, throwing shots. He leaves his chin open, but he feels if I land and I get you good, then you're going away anyway. That's the way he fights. Okay. If Anderson Silva still has anything left, if he's still the guy, if some part of who he is still in there, which you got to think it might be, because I thought that he beat Michael Bisping. I thought he had knocked him out, and they, kind of took that away from him. Then the fight against Daniel Cormier was a really tough assignment, but I thought he acquitted himself pretty well. And Derek Brunson, to me, is a big drop-off from both. Well, I don't know if he's a big drop-off from Michael Bisping, even though I know Michael Bisping is a champion. I don't know if he's a big drop-off from Bisping, but he's definitely a big drop-off from Cormier. I don't know. It's interesting. It could be explosive, and it could launch Anderson Silva back to a certain level. We'll see. But here is the reason why I feel this card does not actually feel like a pay-per-view. This is the first ever featherweight title fight in the UFC for females. Holly Holm, former UFC women's bantamweight champion, and I love Holly Holm. I'm a huge fan. Taking on Germaine de Randamie. Germaine de Randamie, to me, is getting this spot out of default because Cyborg is not available because of the PED suspension. So she can't compete. Everybody knows she's the best featherweight woman in the world. Everybody knows, right? So when you're selling a fight to a fan base who already knows, and it's a title fight, but who already knows the truly best fighter in that division is not going to be fighting, it becomes a difficult sell. And now Holly Holm is such a star after knocking out Ronda Rousey that there is some intrigue there, and then some people are just are going to want to just see the history being made. But Jermaine Durandamy is a great striker. If you see her strike, her striking is very solid. Nobody can dispute that, right? Nobody can. But as her overall game is nowhere near that. It's not. You know, if Holly can take this fight to the ground, and I know Holly is known primarily as a striker, but I know for a fact Holly has worked very hard on her grappling. You know, having lost her title to Miesha Tate the way she did, being choked out, I know for a fact Holly has worked a great deal on her grappling, and I really think that's probably the smartest way for her to fight Jermaine Durandamy. If she can get that fight to the ground, I think Holly wins that fight pretty easy. But this just doesn't feel like a main event for a pay-per-view. It just really doesn't. Now, Holly Holm Cyborg, oh yeah, what a 100% check the box, baby. That's a pay-per-view. But this one, I don't know. But that is all I got for you guys today on this first episode of Mazique Speaks. I want you guys to, we went about an hour and 15 minutes. So I would assume it's probably going to be around this length every week. I will be back on next Wednesday at the same time, 6 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, maybe about a 45-minute break, and then come back at 8 o'clock with the NBA 2K live stream. Like I told you guys, I'll be live streaming a lot more. It's just, I'm finding it's a lot easier. I do plan on going back and cutting these things up so we can, you know, go through the different segments, and also adding the kind of table of contents in the description of this video where we talk about the different subjects. So as always, I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.